We're really excited to be here for our Bridges webinar episode here to have an exciting and vibrant conversation with industry leaders about stepping into a career on Wall Street as a diverse candidate. So excited to have all of you here with us. Thank you. And as we get started and as we get settled in, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping tips for everyone. Remember to mute yourselves until we open the floor for a Q&A, and then we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to turn on your cameras. So we want to see you, as well as our panelists want to see you too. Also, don't forget to update your name so we know who you are, and we will be watching the Zoom chat to see what questions you have. We will share as many of those with our moderator and panelists as we can. And to help kick off our Bridges webinar episode today, we have our esteemed moderator, Moshe Wanunu. Moshe is the president of Mo Digital and founder of @Moshe, the popular Instagram channel that curates news and headlines on Instagram stories that reaches over 135,000 followers. He's an Emmy award-winning producer, formerly with CBS News, Bloomberg TV, Fox News, and CNBC. Throughout his career, he's led teams in major media companies, building products and developing new approaches to storytelling and content creation for all platforms, and currently consults with media brands on their digital transformation. Moshe, we're so excited to have you with us here today and guiding us through our webinar. They are all yours. Thank you, Moshe.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited for this panel. It's an honor to be moderating this discussion today. As someone who's worked in media and had to hire hundreds of people, I know the importance of hiring a diverse team from junior to senior ranks to ensure from a media perspective that we're properly covering and representing the audience and the issues that they care about. It's a challenge for all sectors right now, and I'm looking forward to this discussion today on the evolving work culture at the heart of America's finance industry and the opportunities that are opening up for young people with minority backgrounds at their companies. As the banking sector looks to build a more diverse and inclusive workforce, we're lucky to be speaking with Susan Reed and Cynthia Bowman, who lead human resources and inclusion at two of America's biggest Wall Street firms. Let me introduce them. Susan Reed is a managing director and global head of diversity and inclusion and the Institute for Inclusion at Morgan Stanley. She works to design the firm's diversity and inclusion strategy with emphasis on hiring, retention, development, and advancement of key talent. She currently serves on the board of the Morgan Stanley Foundation, Storefront Academy Charter Schools, I Mentor New York City's advisory board, and is a member of the Executive Leadership Council, and yet still found time to be with us today. Cynthia Bowman is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion and Talent Acquisition Officer for Bank of America. She serves as the Chief Strategist for Inclusion globally, focused on leading programs, initiatives, and policies that actively support the bank's diverse recruitment strategies. She leads a team of talent acquisition professionals responsible for filling tens of thousands of positions annually. She's been recognized on the Ebony Power 100 list, named one of Black Enterprise's top executives in corporate diversity for several years, and was recognized by American Banker as a member of one of the top teams in banking. I'll get started here. We're gonna have a discussion for the first 20, 25 minutes or so, and then we will be opening it up to questions. So I'd like this to be as dynamic as possible. So all of you who are watching, please send in your questions. We wanna make sure we're appropriately and getting to all the things that you most care about. I'm sure I'd like to begin, and I'm sure the audience would like to know about your backgrounds and your professional pathways to Morgan Stanley and Bank of America, respectively. I'll begin with you, Susan. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your journey?
Sure, Moshe, thank you. And thank you to you and Paragon One for hosting this. I think it's so important to have these forums, and, welcome to all the students who are joining. And I'll start by saying, I'll be a walking example of if you're listening and you're not sure what you want to do with your life, don't despair, because that was me when I was you and when I graduated college, and yet here I am, and I'm pretty happy with where my career path has taken me. So, quickly I went to NYU, graduated with a degree in political science and economics. Really, quite frankly, didn't have the benefit of some of the career support that you're having now through Paragon One. And so graduated a little bit unclear as to what I wanted to do. And I took a job at NYU, Moshe, for really, quite frankly, just to be employed. And the wonderful thing that happened is I got a lot of exposure to, the university, but also to different professionals who came to the university to recruit talent. And it was through that exposure and just, listening and asking questions and learning that I decided that I wanted to make HR my focus in my career. And from there, I just went and sought out opportunities to be in HR. It's always good to try to move into something from a position of strength. My position of strength was I was at NYU and knew the university and had built up a great deal of credibility there. So it was natural for me to move into HR at the university, and I did that. And that was my start in HR. And then I just parlayed that going forward into different roles at different firms. I've been with Morgan Stanley for the last 14 years in HR. I've had various roles and currently lead diversity. And, I'm sure we'll get into some of the diversity related work, but it's been an absolute joy to do that work on behalf of the firm and to be able to help young people figure out their path in life in the same way that I had to figure out mine.
Thanks, Susan. Cynthia, your pathway.
Absolutely. And similar to Susan, I just want to say thank you for hosting today's session. It's my pleasure to talk to many of you. I just dropped my son off for his sophomore year, but first time on campus last week, and just the energy that I was able to receive from the students being on campus as a mom, not necessarily as a student, but was equally exciting, I think, for me as it was for him. So welcome. My path was very similar to Susan. So I'm doing work now in an area that probably is very different than what I thought I was doing when I was in school. I actually was a dual degree engineering student. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from Spelman College and a Bachelor of Industrial Engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology. And I worked in the technical field for several years and started to gravitate, quite frankly, to more people roles and management roles. I actually was working for AT&T Bell Laboratories, and I was a part of their leadership development program and ended up on a project related to culture change, and ended up working with a consultant and decided I would leave my job. I went back to school. I have my MBA from Kellogg Business School at Northwestern, and I've been doing HR work ever since. I worked in consulting for about 9 years, and I worked my way all the way up. I left as a senior executive. At the time was the new name for the lowest level of partner, but as a partner. And I have been at Bank of America for about 14 years, and all in the area of HR. So I now lead both diversity inclusion for the firm globally, as well as talent acquisition. And I have the pleasure of managing our program that brings in all of our campus hires every year. We just actually wrapped up our last internship class, which is about 2,000 students, while also starting our full-time class, which is about another 2,000 students globally. And so really proud to be here and happy to engage in conversation today.
Great. So let's get to the topic at hand, building a Wall Street career as a diverse candidate. To be blunt, historically, Wall Street has not been known as the most diverse place. And Cynthia, you just brought up culture change, and that's culture change internally at organizations as well as the recruitment side. And so, I'll pose it first to you, based on your experience and your trajectory. When did Wall Street wake up, and what caused them to wake up? And where are we, as far as you're concerned, on the path to ensuring diverse workforces when it comes to the big banks?
Look, I would say this, and look, I'm a fan of the big banks because I work there. So I'm just gonna sort of try to dispel a few things. If you look at, I am clearly a person that uses data to form our opinions, to help share facts, and to outline areas of opportunity. And that's why if you go online, you can look at our human capital management report. We've done it for the last 2 years, although we've been disclosing data for several years, to look at the work that we're doing to address diversity in banking. And we share our statistics relative to EEOC statistics in the financial services industry. And what you'll find is a lot of banks actually are doing, we can always do better, but fairly well in terms of mirroring the clients and communities we serve. So for instance, at Bank of America, our workforce is over 50% women. We've been over 50% women for years. Our workforce now is about 48% people of color, and it's about 13% Asian, we're about 18% Hispanic, and 13, almost 14% Black. Which means that if you look at census and the data that just came out, and I've mentioned those 3 racial groups because those are the largest out of the total groups, but we pretty much mirror the world we live in as a company. And I don't know that those types of statistics are ones that are largely shared. As a matter of fact, our internship class, and this has been over the last couple of years, which we also report, is nearly 50% women and is over 50% people of color. Once again, mirroring the world that we live in. The opportunity traditionally has been in certain areas, but more specifically, as you move up to the top of the house, do you see the same representation? And so that's why we do things like share statistics on the board where we have 6 women, we have 3 people of color. We share statistics around our management team, which is incredibly diverse as well, over 50%. If you think about diversity in terms of race, ethnicity, and by women and gender. We share statistics about 3D from the CEO, because those are traditionally positions of great opportunity and certainly more senior. We also share statistics in our report about our manager population, because that's the pipeline of leadership, as well as all of our statistics are publicly shared for all of the EEOC guidelines. So I just want to talk a little bit about the facts, but are there areas of opportunity still? Absolutely. But I do think that we are doing our part in terms of ensuring that of the great talent that exists across all forms of life that we have, whether it's race, sexual orientation and identity, veterans, disabilities, that we do a lot to really try to emphasize the importance that inclusion is about everyone, and we're looking for incredibly diverse talent to work at Bank of America.
That's great. I'd love to pose it over to Susan. How much progress do you think has been made, Susan? Where are the successes so far, and where are the challenges as far as you're concerned?
Yeah. So Moshe, I'd start by saying that the challenges that you're seeing around diversity and inclusion at the banks is a systemic problem across society in most organizations of size, right? And I start there because I think that we're obviously, Cynthia and I are in financial services, but I think if you were having this forum with 2 other firms from another sector, you probably would have the same scenario. So the starting point is society has a whole lot of work to do. And I think last year was proof point around that with the whole George Floyd incident and the focus on race across society. I think that progress has been made on most fronts, racial progress, gender progress, and other aspects of diversity. When I think about our LGBTQ population, for example, I think there's been meaningful progress on every front. But like Cynthia, I would agree, there's still more work to do. We're on a journey. The top of the house for most firms of size is still not diverse enough, and we're all doing more to get more diverse. Similar to Cynthia, our board is now more diverse than ever. Our senior leadership team is now more diverse than ever. But I still think we all have a little bit more work to do to get more diversity at the top of the house. But I also think, again, throughout the organization, we're also about 50% women. But I also think, it's not just about the numbers, but about the culture. And I think we have to acknowledge that a lot of the larger institutions, banks and others, were built by people who didn't necessarily look like me and Cynthia. And so our cultures also need to shift, right? So it's about the diversity and the inclusion piece. Our cultures are also shifting around how we operate as large organizations to make sure that people who come in, who look like me and Cynthia, feel a sense of belonging, feel a sense of agency, feel like they have a seat at the table. And I think that's also a piece. So I think we all have more work to do on the representation piece. But I also think we need to continue to push the envelope on the culture piece and making sure that anybody who comes to our firm who doesn't look like the traditional folks who are at our firms feels that they're a part of the fabric of the organization, feels like they have agency and feel like they can contribute in a meaningful way and thrive.
I'd love to hear more about that, Susan. So once people are in the door, how do you ensure that they have a route to that C-suite? And separate, as a secondary question, draw the line for me between a diverse workforce and the ultimate success of the company?
Yeah. So I'll take the first question first. Cynthia can probably point to similar things. So there's a lot going on across Morgan Stanley to make sure that when we bring in folks of color, including young adults, they're set up for success. I'll start by talking about the work we're doing on the organization itself, because the way I think about this is the responsibilities about, I'm making these numbers up, 80-20 or 70-30. Most of the responsibilities on organizations to make sure that they've done the work to create an organization that is welcoming. So we've done a ton of work in the last many, many years, actually, not just the last few years, around mindset, around culture, around educating people about the ways that bias can creep into your thinking. There was a lot of ramp up around that in the last 18 months, obviously, again, coming off of what happened in, around with the George Floyd incident, but really making sure that everybody understands that your culture has to be welcoming, and that everybody who's in a role at the firm, whether you're a leader or an individual contributor, you have to have a way to check your own mindset, check for biases. We had Robin DiAngelo come in last year, to talk about her book, White Fragility. And I'll tell you, like, the title alone probably gave people some pause, but we thought it was important to have a provocative conversation around race. And that's just one small example of the investment that we're making there. I think on the other side, the 20 or 30%, and again, those are rough numbers. There are programs that are specifically designed to make sure that diverse individuals are set up for success. So for junior talent coming in, like any large bank, we have a whole series of development offerings that are available to every junior person coming in, Black, white, no matter your background. But in addition to that, we make sure that we bring together young adults from diverse communities into smaller communities to create, again, that sense of home, that sense of belonging. We have active employee networks that they can join, the Black employee network, the Hispanic employee network, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole suite of work that goes on to make sure that's happening. Say your second question again. Sorry,
the second question was, draw the line for me between the importance of a diverse workforce and the ultimate success of a company.
Yeah. So here's my view on that, and I don't know that this view is shared by everybody. When I remember when I first came into D&I, there was this overwhelming push to prove this magical business case between a diverse workforce and a firm's revenue and them being more successful. And I think there's been enough research done that shows that diverse teams are think differently. There's more creative abrasion, so you get to better outcomes, you get to better products, you get to better solutions for clients. I don't think we need to have that conversation anymore. Quite frankly, I take it back to my comment about society. If we're going to be a society that stands up to its promise of treating people with respect, treating people with dignity, giving everybody who is here on this planet an opportunity to thrive, I think we have this responsibility. So I think the business case, the financial business case, has been proven time and time again. More diverse boards, more diverse leadership results in better outcomes. I think the piece that I think sometimes we wrestle with, which I almost wish we didn't, is the moral imperative. And to me, if you exist, we ought to be creating a place for you to thrive. And we haven't done a great job as a country about making sure that folks of color and women are thriving in our workplaces. And I think that we've had a reckoning around that. And shame on us if we don't grab hold of that and say, okay, now we're all going to be doing the right thing. And we may start in different places, but we're going to work like heck to make sure. Look, if you want to get into technical numbers, as Cynthia was quoting her numbers, hey, we know more than 50% of college campuses now are women. So if your company hasn't created a way to recruit women successfully and to make them, to help them set them up for success in your workforce, think about the issue you're going to have down the road with recruiting talent. Because when you go to campus, you better be prepared to engage with women in an appropriate way, recruit them, and provide opportunities that allow women to thrive. So it becomes a pure math problem at that point.
Very well said, Susan. And you have a bunch of fans in the comments right now for your most recent answer. I want to toss it back over to Cynthia in regards to your professional development programs when it comes to mentoring and grooming young talent once they're in the door for management opportunities. And I'll apply a question we just got in from, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing, Sadman Khan, who says, do you think there are enough opportunities in Wall Street in terms of career progression for people of color? Cynthia, you're muted still. All right,
Sorry,
we got you.
It was telling me that I could not unmute myself, so thank you for that. Like, I couldn't agree more with Susan. I'm going to start with this business case because I think we're beyond the business case. And as Susan mentioned, you can look at Harvard, the Center for Talent Innovation, which is called Quoqual, Deloitte. I mean, there's articles on top of articles that have proven that there's a direct correlation with diversity and inclusion to the bottom line. And I remember an interview that our CEO did with Bloomberg, and someone asked him a while ago about the business case for women in the workplace. And he answered it pretty much the same way Susan did, but he said, "You're asking me the wrong question. We're beyond the business case. If we don't understand the population of our clients, the individuals we support, why diversity is critical to the bottom line, how it helps us to be better as an organization, then we're missing, we're just beyond that at this point." And yes, there should also be a moral imperative, but we also understand there's a business imperative. What I would say is this: for individuals entering into the workforce, as well as individuals who are matriculating through jobs at the company, we measure inclusion through an index. And that index is measured every year. We have results for every manager, for every region, for every line of business, for every line of business, to help us to understand how people think about inclusion in the workplace. So we define what we think it is for our company. And at its core, it's really two things. Can you be who you are at work, your authentic self? Do you feel like you have to cover, or do you bring who you are to work every day such that you can thrive without feeling like you have to adopt to fit a mold? The second way we measure this through equity, which is a term that's coming up a lot now. It used to be diversity inclusion. You hear a lot about equity, but essentially it is, do I have equal access to opportunities, or have you adjusted your processes such that there's truly equitable ways to progress throughout this company? That could be things like a diverse slate. It could be things like a diverse interview team. It could be gender neutral job descriptions. These are processes that organizations are putting in place throughout the talent life cycle to help leaders make more equitable decisions. So that's how we define it. And I will tell you, our diversity inclusion index as a company has gone up year over year over year, which means that the work that we continue to do to create a culture that addresses those two things is creating higher levels of satisfaction. If you look at our human capital management report, which is online, towards the end, you'll see attrition or turnover, and turnover has continued to go down. So we have not only more people staying at the bank, but we also have higher levels of satisfaction. And those are the two things that you're going to want to see to know if the programs you're putting in place to allow for an inclusive environment to occur are working. The other thing I would say too around programs that you asked specifically, we're not at a loss of programs. And I know Susan said this as well, the industry is not at a loss. We have tons of programs to invest in talent, to help you to get broader exposure to careers. As an example, our interns that just came in, they met with every executive at the company, including the CEO. They had engagements with the boards. They met with key leaders across the organization. They engaged around ESG topics, which we know are really core towards environmental social governance and to our generations that are entering into the workforce. They did public service virtually. And so while learning business acumen, walking away with core skills and a broader, deeper knowledge of types of careers in banking, while getting mentorship and sponsorship and support during the summer experience, where a large population of those individuals, a significantly large, will be coming back to work for us next year. So a little bit just about our development programs. And the last thing I will say is similar to Susan, we also have top talent or emerging talent programs. We have targeted programs for new managers or to the pipeline for those that are choosing more managerial careers. And those are available to everyone. And then in addition to that, we do some targeted programs specifically for things like first-time corporate, we call them individuals who are like first-time corporate, meaning they have not had other individuals in their families that have been in corporate America before. And we invest a little bit more in terms of know-how and issues just really around acclimation into corporate America, to help those individuals transition into the company. So those are some of the things that we do at Bank of America, but I wanted to start with the data to show you that I think the avenues that we've been pursuing are working incredibly well, and the feedback that we're receiving is showing that more and more people feel connected to our company and proud to work for the bank.
I had the same issue. I couldn't unmute myself. I'll get to all the students' questions are coming in right now. Reminder, please send them in a moment, but I'll ask one more question before we get to all of them. And that is, for all the people watching today interested in working for your companies, can you kind of give us the quick summation of the various programs you're running, from internships to co-ops to shadowing programs, that they should be aware of and watch for if they want to engage with your brands and work for your companies? I'll begin with you, Susan.
Yeah, sure. There is a long list. And, you know, I'm happy to, after this session, get our campus team to send over maybe the link so that if folks are interested, they can go on and read more. But I'll give you a few examples. You know, starting with, you know, early college, we have a program called the Early Insights Program, Moshe, which provides students an opportunity to come in their freshman and sophomore year and spend some time with us. It's been virtual, obviously, this last year. It used to be on site at our headquarters in Times Square, but spend about a day and a half to 2 days with us, just getting the lay of the land, right? Understanding what financial services is about, looking at meeting with professionals who work for us, learning from them, getting some coaching around how to successfully apply for jobs with us, interview training and the like. And we provide that in segments, meaning it's we have early insights for women, for example. We have early insights for Black and Hispanic talent. We have early insights for veterans, and so on and so forth. So the conversations can be very targeted, and people can bring the questions that matter most to them. So those are a set of offerings that I encourage people to take advantage of. You know, we have a program called the Freshman Enhancement Program, which is a longer multi-week program for college freshmen. You know, lots of firms don't do tons around freshmen, but we offer this opportunity for diverse individuals. And again, it's a chance for you to get some real life work experience and get introduced to Morgan Stanley. And whether you participate in it or not, it's a great layup, but you don't have to. It's a great layup for summer internships with the firm. And of course, you know, like Cynthia, we hire, you know, lots of interns all across the plant in every single division. So if you want to be in banking, if you want to be in wealth, if you want to be in HR, we have an internship cohort that we bring in every summer. And so every function of the firm hires, and you can come and spend the summer with us and learn. We typically target that junior year summer, and it leads right into full-time hiring. So if you intern with us and you complete that successfully, that's typically where we make our very first offers. So I can't stress enough how important it is, you know, whether it's Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan or some other firm, please, all of you, focus on landing that internship opportunity in the career field of your choice. I know it can be really, really tough, and every sector is a little bit different, but if there's an internship opportunity, start learning early about what it will take, what are the requirements, because most firms now of size hire through their summer programs, and I would say probably close to a 90%, if not higher, a higher percentage of our open full-time roles get filled through those internship classes. And then, you know, there's some light hiring at the end, but recruiting has completely changed. You know, I missed the boat when I was in college. Don't miss the boat. Internships are critical. Internships are critical. That's your layup for a successful run at a really solid full-time offer. So that's just a sample. There are plenty more. And again, we're happy to send information to you and to the Paragon team to share with this group after this call.
Great.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Yeah, really the same thing. I mean, the time is now, and I agree. Internships are critical. You can go to Bank of America career site, type in internships, it'll walk you through. But we offer a wide variety of programs for both campus and entry-level talent. Our flagship program is a 10-week summer internship, which we just completed. Those internships are global and across all of our businesses. So the three main areas are going to be in sort of the what I would call client-facing areas, which are traditionally global banking and markets, or our wealth management or our consumer businesses. And there's a myriad of different opportunities. The second area would be what I would call our support, our staff support. That's going to be finance, HR, communications and marketing, audit, areas like that. And then the last area would be technology and operations. And by the way, our tech and ops actually has a freshman program available. All the other programs, we really do target sophomores and or juniors, with the idea of coming back again for another internship as a sophomore or coming back as a full-time hire. And we convert a very large portion. The majority of our full-time class comes from our internship program. We also have early talent identification programs, just like Susan mentioned. Those will also be on our website and we'll be opening up soon. I could tell you the internships we are recruiting now. We've already have several individuals who have already been extended an offer. So the time is now to secure an internship for the summer of 2022.
Great. We've gotten a number of good questions. I'd like to get to them. As I call on you, just give Mike a moment to highlight you and ensure we can hear and see you clearly. I want to begin with Alexandria Blackwell of Howard University.
Hi, my name is Alexandria Blackwell from Howard University. I'm a junior marketing major. I was in the social media market intelligence externship with Paragon 1. And my question is for Cynthia Bowman. What would you say is the most important thing you learned as a person of color entering this industry?
I'm sorry, as a person of color, and then I didn't get the end of your question.
Entering this industry.
Look, I started out the industry in sort of the technology space as it's related to the telecommunications industry. And then when I worked in consulting, I primarily worked in more technical fields. So my first introduction going into really banking was with Bank of America. One of the reasons that I was attracted to Bank of America was because of its longstanding work around diversity and inclusion. So it was very important to me to go work for a company where I can look up and see people that look like me, or that I knew had a strategy that basically said, like, this is not something separate, this is embedded in who we are. We hold leaders accountable and we're committed to driving progress, and we have products and services that support diverse communities. So for me, it was really important to see myself in the company that I chose to work with. And as a woman of color, I think specifically, because I don't really separate that. I'm a Black woman. I'm not a woman who happens to be Black or vice versa. That's how I self-identify myself. And not only was it important for me to see women on the board, but it was important to see women of color on the board. We have Monica Lozano, who's a Hispanic Latino woman. And then it was also important for me to see other people who look like me throughout the organization. And so that's just something that was important to me because it says something to me about the corporation's commitment. I will tell you this, I think, one of the things for me entering into my career was understanding the importance of sponsorship, because research shows that particularly women and women of color are least likely to be sponsored. And sponsorship is just key. You need to have people and work somewhere where there are individuals who take an interest in you and are willing to open the doors and create opportunities. And I would say that would be my reflection sort of as a woman of color in banking, is having the right sponsors and people who are advocating for you, not because of who I am, but because of my performance, but understanding the issues that I might experience as a person of color is equally important.
Susan, I want to see, do you have anything to add to that?
I would, one other thing I would add is, so I've been with Morgan Stanley for 14 years, and there have been a lot of lessons learned even earlier in my career. But the one other thing I would say, Alexandra, is it's really important for you to find something that you really enjoy doing, and in general, right? But I think that's especially the case as a woman of color, because you know life's tough. Careers, if you're planning to grow a career, if you want to get into a senior leadership role, the demands on you will be great. I often think people get very excited about starting their career and advancing. I remind people that as you get more and more senior, the demands become more and more intense. And as a woman of color, you're often going to be the only one in the room, right? Until more and more get into our space and in other spaces. Apologize, I've got an ambulance going by. But if you love what you do, those tough days won't be as tough. If you don't really like the work, those tough days are 10 times harder. So as you start your career, pay attention to the stuff that gets you excited. You might start off in a job where some aspect of it gets you excited and the rest of it doesn't. Center your thinking around that. Get clear around that, because that'll give you clues as to where you might want to focus your career, so that even when you hit those tough days, you're still willing to keep going, and you can keep going because the work excites you, right? I think that's so important. Doing a job that you don't love, being a person of color on Wall Street, is really, really tough. Doing a job that you love, being a person on Wall Street, still tough days, but you can get through it because you get excited by the work.
Great. Thanks, Alexandra. Great question. Great answers. I want to call next. He sent in several questions. Johnny Fernandez.
Hey, do you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. So hi guys. I'm Johnny Fernandez. I am a senior at the University of Rochester. This summer, I also interned at Rock Capital as a summer analyst. So my question, well, the first question was pretty much answered. The first question was, are there any current issues along the lines of diversity and inclusion that still remain an issue? Susan hit it well, talking about the systemic problems in the institutions. So I really wanted to ask for both Cynthia and Susan, how can the future people entering Wall Street, how can they play a more active role in any future change?
Oh, I'll start. After George Floyd's murder, we had an ad, and that ad said, sometimes there's a time to do more, this time much more. And I always find it interesting when particularly individuals are looking for corporations to speak out. And I certainly understand that we have a role, and there's been a lot of ways that we have leaned in. As an example, back about a year ago, we committed $1.25 billion to help address the issues that Susan brought up, which are around addressing economic opportunity for all and addressing racial equity, specifically in 4 areas that we feel like we can help to combat some of these societal issues, things like job creation and reskilling, things like the disparate impact that this pandemic has had on communities of color, things like helping to support small businesses, particularly diverse small businesses that were even hit harder over the past year and a half, as well as housing and creating more access to housing equitably in the world that we live in. And so those are the 4 things that our dollars are going towards around that $1.25 billion. In addition to corporations, though, I think that what we can use, which many, I think, of our leaders of the future are already doing, is weighing in on how they can individually help drive change. One of the things we've been doing across our company, we've been calling them courageous conversations, but really they're conversations that have created empathy and understanding around difference. We use storytelling as a way to help people understand things that individuals across our company, again, regardless of race and other elements of diversity or gender, experience that sometimes we're just not aware of because it's not happening to me directly. I have grown so much in this role. I've been in the diversity role for 6 years by listening to other people, listening to understand and not reply, saving space for grace, giving people the benefit of the doubt, but yet being willing to have open dialogues to hear different perspectives that may not be similar to mine, but guess what? I can grow by understanding someone else's perspective. and trying to stay away from some of these charged political topics that are coming out now that are doing more to divide than bring us all together. So that's what I think we all could do, is find ways to be more inclusive and not an exclusive. If I was to ask everyone on this call, have you ever felt excluded? I'm sure all of our hands would go up. And guess what? If you say, well, how does that make you feel? You'll hear a lot of things like an outsider, not a part of the team, last to be picked. No one likes that. So inclusion is just creating environments within your teams, within your work groups, within your institutions and schools, where you don't have people who feel like those outsiders for whatever reason. And sometimes the tax that society places on us is even extra, just based on how I'm perceived immediately when I walk in the room. So I just challenge all of us, to your question, to say, what are you doing? What are you doing to create a more equitable world? Pick one thing. And I think collectively together, I know it sounds pie in the sky, but I think that's how we start to change what we have been seeing as some of these systemic issues that continue to plague our society.
If I could add one thing, Johnny, your voice really matters at a firm like Morgan Stanley. By the way, if you go to a firm and you find it doesn't, that's a bit of a yellow flag. And I say that because, when you ask what you can do, managers, ultimately, leaders care about people. And what I've found in the time I've been in this job is, when our staff come forward to say, hey, this thing is happening and it's affecting me, people listen and people respond. Pre-George Floyd, there was a whole bunch of shootings, and we did some work around that, several years ago. And the catalyst for that was new, relatively young hire to the firm, a young Black man who came to me and said, Susan, I've been coming into work, but I have to tell you, I'm really affected by what's going on. It's really hard for me to come in. How can the firm support me? And he was the catalyst for us to do a pretty big piece of work around discussions around race. So your voice really matters. So I hope that wherever you land, and hopefully you've already landed, that you feel empowered and comfortable enough to speak up when something's on your mind, right? To your manager, to your leadership, and to ask for their support. And don't be afraid to ask for their support. And I promise you that if you feel that way, or if you're concerned about something someone else is too, they probably just don't have the courage to say it. So have the courage to use your voice authentically and honestly in the workplace, in an appropriate way. Share where your head is, right? And that, by the way, isn't always issues based. It may not necessarily be about something that's happening in society. It may be about a project that you're working on where, you look at it from the seat you're in, the background that you're from, and you might say, geez, you know what, guys, if we do it that way, this is the result. But if we do it this way, this is the result. So have the courage and conviction to use your voice to better the products and services wherever you land, but also to speak up when things are getting in your way and you have barriers. I promise you somebody will listen. And if they're not, that's a yellow flag. You need to check out why they might not be listening. But that's literally where change starts in organizations like Morgan Stanley.
Thanks, Johnny. Next up, we have Ashley Wong.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley. I'm an incoming junior at Boston University, and my question is for Cynthia. So Cynthia, you talked a little bit about sponsors and mentorship, and my question is, how do you best create a community of sponsors who will advocate for your work?
Yeah, well, thank you, Ashley, for the question. So there's a book that I have used a lot, and it's called Forget a Mentor, Get a Sponsor. So I would recommend, it's a quick read. And in the book, it talks about the difference between mentoring, which is someone who's giving you advice, but really doesn't have that position of power and influence to open opportunities for you, whether it is helping you to get that new job or broadening sort of the work you're doing today or getting you promoted or elevated to a new role. So it advocates sponsorship. And I think they define it in a way that I tend to use, which is somebody who really could use their position, currency, or capital and cash it in on your behalf. And they're willing to do that because they either have support of you and your brand or a history of your contributions, Because usually when someone cashes that in, they're going to want to make sure they get something for it. So they're only going to really provide that sponsorship, opening those doors, opportunities, picking up the phone, calling someone on your behalf, referring you for a role, if they truly believe that they're going to get, something out of it and that you're going to deliver on the back end. So I also talk to people about, well, what does that mean to get sponsored? Because there was a lot of times I had sponsors that I didn't even know were my sponsors until I found that out later. But it was because sort of my history of performance and consistency. It was because they probably saw something in me. Sometimes I created what I would call win-win relationships, where you would meet individuals and then follow up and try to do things that help to benefit them. That helps to create sponsorship. Another one I would say is lead with a yes. I was always willing to take on, I feel like if someone asked me to do something, they have enough confidence in my ability. So as opposed to saying, no, I'm not ready, I would just lean in. I would always say lean in before you lean out, lead with a yes, and then figure out how to do it and understand sort of all the resources that are needed to excel. But that's really the difference. And so if I apply that to my early days in my career, some of the sponsors were the individuals at Accenture that ultimately helped me in my process to get promoted. Because it's an upper out culture. I started as a senior consultant. I then went to manager. I then went to senior manager. I then went to senior executive and partner. And each stage I had sponsorship, which are people, when my name came up for that discussion, who was speaking up on my behalf. And then the last thing I always tell people is know what's said about you when you're not in the room. It's really important to be self-aware. And I had to find someone to sit on my own personal board of directors that was willing to tell me what I needed to hear, even when it was tough to hear, so that I knew what was being said about me when I wasn't present.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Great. Next up, we have Jen Sadolino. Oh, we've lost Jen. Though she had a question, and I've seen a couple questions related to this, related to students who can't afford to live in a city like New York during the summer. How can they be included? And we had a question also related to international folks internationally who want to be working at your companies.
Well, we have opportunities across the globe. So I would say apply, and then we'll help you work through those issues. We also have, New York is not the only option. We have a lot of our interns who are also in Charlotte, but we have all types of supplemental resources to help individuals find housing and to experience a summer where they could work productively. So I would get the opportunity, and I think what you'll find is a lot of corporations have resources, tips and tools to help with issues around housing and or placement.
Great. And Susan?
Yeah, and yeah. I would say same. I would say same for Morgan Stanley, and generally speaking, once you've got an offer, we're going to do everything we can to help you get here, and of course, thrive here for the summer. So apply. Don't let concerns about being able to find housing or afford housing hold you back. Apply, and we'll work through those with you.
Next up, and I hope she's still here, is Marissa Ruiz.
Yeah, hi. So you guys have both touched upon my question already, but Cynthia, you were talking a little bit about how to identify like good companies to work for. So one thing you said was looking at the board, making sure there's people who look like you, and then and stuff along those lines. So I was wondering, what are other things that you can look for when you're looking for companies, and then also when you're within a company as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. One, Marissa, I would say always do your research. So one is going to be, I don't even like using the word fit, but where do you feel like has a culture? And I define culture as like the values that are really held, not just what's on the wall, because every corporation will have like core values, but how things really get done. And so anytime, if I would encourage you, whenever you're interviewing for a company, to ask those kind of questions, how would you describe the corporate culture? How do things really get done? What is valued in this organization in terms of behaviors? Because that'll help you to understand, based off the answers you receive, if those things resonate with you. If those are in your own moral compass about what matters most. And then diversity, I would just say, is you look around and you ask questions around, well, how diverse is the team? And if it's not, it doesn't mean it's not a place to go, but the question needs to be, well, what is the commitment, if that matters to you, to diversity? What does that look like in terms of initiatives? What can I expect to experience as a new employee at your company? How do you, what types of investments can I expect to receive? And so those are the things that I would ask about beyond just the board and the leadership team, because I think the experiences that many people are going to have as an intern should really be answering the question, is this a place where I see myself working longer term, and using that as a time, almost to take a little bit of risk to explore different areas before you make that final step. My mom used to say, I don't think it's her quote, but it's never too late to be what you might have been. And so for me, it was always a way to explore different opportunities and not allowing my past to dictate my future and where I'm going. And as you're asking questions, I think we should think about that as well.
If I might add one thing, Moshe, we have a saying at Morgan Stanley. We say the manager is the magic. So Marissa, a large firm like Morgan Stanley and JP, diversity and leadership is important. Look for that. But to be quite honest, your day-to-day is going to be your manager and your team. And so I would be paying real attention to the interaction during the interview process and what that is like, whether you feel that it's a welcoming experience, whether you feel that it's a positive experience, whether you're seeing signs that you'll get the support that you need. I think it's very, very important, because 90% of what you're going to experience and feel about the firm will be dictated by the experience that you have with your manager and your team. So pay close attention to how you're feeling during an interview and whether you think that team will surround you, support you, and help you to thrive.
Great advice. The manager is the magic, and it's never too late to be what you might have been. We have about 4 minutes left. I want to get to one more question, and that one goes to Sadman Khan.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
So my
Oh.
So my question was that, like, with Wall Street being known for having non-hours of work, do you think that the work-life balance is like particularly challenging for people of color who often have other duties like family responsibilities and other stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Sadman, I talked about that a little bit earlier. Yeah, I mean, if you choose a Wall Street career, we shouldn't sugarcoat this. Expect it to be demanding. I mean, it will be, right? And I think, and again, and if you want to do that and rise and get into more senior roles, expect it to be demanding. I do think it's critical, again, to like what you do, because when you're putting in long hours, you want to make sure the work is interesting. But I also think you should feel comfortable. And I think that's also the moment that we're in, coming out of a pandemic. Be comfortable speaking up about what you need, again, with your manager, within your team, right? I often find that people build up in their minds this monster around asking for flexibility, or asking for an accommodation, or needing to leave early on Wednesdays. I'm making this up, for something that matters to them. They build it up into this this monster, and the anxiety around initiating the conversation is worse than initiating the conversation. So I've been with Morgan Stanley for 14 years. I work really hard, but I also feel very much that I can integrate my life and my work. And, there are times when I've got a dentist appointment and I'm not going to be in until noon, or I got to leave early, or there's something that matters to me. I'm on a number of boards, so I dedicate a bunch of my time to my board service. It's important to me, and the firm fully supports that. And I really love that the firm supports that. Does it also mean, though, that there are times when I make a concession? Yeah, I'm going to be on vacation for the next 2 weeks. There's probably a call or two that I'll have to take. But because I know there's give and take in this relationship, I'm willing to live with that. And it doesn't feel like a sacrifice for me. It feels like I'm balancing my life and I'm managing my life. It's not work and life, by the way, it's work life. It's all one thing. And you over the course of a long career, you just got to figure out how to blend those two things so that you have satisfaction at work you have a meaningful home life, and you can contribute to your home life and your family life in a rich way. By the way, one of the ways I do that too is I talk about my family life at work. I don't keep that a secret. I find the more people know me, know who I am, know what I care about, it creates this openness and this dialogue. And boss is asking about this and that, and how's your grandmother, or how's your dad, or whatever. And it creates humanity in the workplace. And that's what's going to change the workplace for us to be able to show up, work hard, and also play hard, right? So that's what's worked for me.
I mean, I think Susan pretty much said it all. Here's what I would say. If I look at the course of my career, I've always worked incredibly hard. However, the more senior I became, I realized that I could be pretty unapologetic about what Susan's talking about as work-life integration, not balance, but integration. And so I have become much more clear on not asking, but I treat people like professionals. Even on my team, people have a lot of flexibility. I expect them to get their job done in whatever hours that it takes. But if they need to leave early, go to a doctor, take a kid, or I have someone who spends a certain time every week doing public service at a local prison, then people have their one thing of what they are committing to do. And I've always allowed for that flexibility. I will tell you, in our internship space, there's some areas that have different levels of, to Susan's demanding hours than others, and it's just sort of the nature of the industry. But we've tried to put parameters also in place so that it's reasonable and more balanced over time. And so there are some HR policies that I believe that are in place to try to help individuals manage that if they're not managing it for themselves.
Thanks, Sadman. Thanks, everyone. We could do this for a second hour, though I don't think, or a third hour. There's so much incredible wisdom here, and you guys are all very lucky to have been getting such incredible insights from Susan and Cynthia. With that said, I'm going to kick it back to Cody.
Thank you all so much, Moshe, Cynthia, Susan. This was an incredible 60 minutes with you. All of our attendees, thank you for being with us. Check out the Zoom chat. If you're interested in more opportunities like this and insights, check out the rest of our Bridges webinar episodes every Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for being with us. Enjoy your Friday and have a beautiful weekend, everyone. Be well.
Thank you all.